use what is easiest in availability to us, force. Force, for me, is as much a demonstration of weakness as it is a thought about strength. I equate those who, at one far end of the spectrum, are using hate speech and all kinds of things to antagonize others as a way of expressing their frustration, with the same as people who see solution to everything in force. The challenge of Nigeria today must be a challenge of a generation that understands that the essence is the advance of the common good of all, and that clear-thinking leadership can provide us an opportunity for transforming and getting a collective commitment to achieving those goals. And I want to use as closing examples of what a proper federal structure does to excite people to commit to making things go. A few anecdotal references. I've been heard say this several times. You know, back in the 60s and early 70s, there was a lot of work about ethnicity and problems in Africa. Two academics out of Michigan State University at the time, Robert Melton and Howard Wolpe, tried to defend the African, tried to defend the Nigerian, that this is not just crude ethnicity, that what is happening is that there are ethnic nationality groups that are trying to outcompete the other. And they call this competitive communalism. And I've had a few favorite illustrations for this phenomenon in the attempt to show an understanding for the principle of subsidiarity. One of those is television and how it came to our shores. I'm sure many have heard me before refer back to the fact that when the federal government, with the Nigerian Broadcasting Service, denied the Premier of Western Region the opportunity to make his point, he quickly decided to go into broadcasting. He was not barred from doing that because the regions could not, did not have the powers. He could establish a broadcast station. But instead of going into radio, which was the dominant medium, he chose to jump to the next level. A television station was founded. And so in Ibadan in 1959, the first television station in Africa came to be. Television in Ibadan before there was in Brussels, before there was in Dublin. And what did that do? Eastern Nigeria was going to be in a rush. I went to school in Ibadan. I went to Loyola College in the 60s, and I remember that payoff line. WNTV first in Africa. And as soon as Eastern Region started its own, which was not too far apart, theirs was what? Second to none. What does Western Region do when it realized that colonial government did not industrialize the country? Well, set up an industrial estate in a part of Western Region that we call Ikeja today. If you drive down Obakran today, you will see that Odua Investments has significant interest in many of those factories there, whether it's Nigerite or whatever. It came because of the process of how that got started. And what did the Premier of Eastern Region do? He would not be outdone by Western Region, so he simultaneously starts Aba and Trans-Amadi in Port Harcourt. And the governor, Premier of Northern Region starts the Kakuri Industrial Estate, which was blooming until Bishop Kuka's church there created problems. So, the point is, you move to education. Western Nigeria moves quickly with free education, doing great, envy of all, and many of us here would not have had the opportunity to get in life if that was not in place. Zeke goes east and wants to replicate the same thing. Doesn't have enough resources to do it. And insists he will not be outdone by Western Region. So the permanent secretary, newly appointed permanent secretary, Ministry of Finance in Enugu, Chief Jerome Udoji, says, look, this can't work. We don't have the resources. We don't earn as much as Western Region earns from cocoa, from palm produce. Okay, maybe we should have school fees for primary 1 and primary 5. And Zeke goes to Parliament and says that Udoji is trying to sabotage his government. Udoji takes umbrage, decides to leave, goes off on leave to London, preparatory, accepted a job from John Holt, literally speaking, and people came to beg him not to do it. But what? Eastern Nigeria works out a formula peculiar to Eastern Nigeria. They get the missions, the communities, and the government to work collaboratively on a program that came to be known as Ibuanye Danda. Those who understand Igbo will know the ants, you know, Bunu Bunu, Ibuanye Danda. And Eastern Nigeria was to be able to leapfrog in education and get, you know, where it wanted to go. The point is that each region has its peculiarity and can grow very quickly. That a federation can come from this kind of competition that is playing out. But where we have systems and processes, where political parties play their part, and that's my biggest challenge, political parties are not the instruments of mobilizing and forming people for this kind of role play, we get into the kind of challenges that we get into today. So what we must, in my view, offer our countries an understanding that restructuring is part of a continuous conversation in a federal arrangement. It is not something to abuse people about or kill people about. It is something to engage in. And if we have the appropriate platforms, organized by political parties, organized by civil society, we can keep adapting and adjusting to the challenges of change. Remember, as Machiavelli said many, many years ago, there will be people who resist such change. And one of my favorite quotes from Machiavelli, nothing is more difficult to bring about than a new order of things. Because those who profit from the old order will do everything to prevent a new order from coming about. And it's not finished. Those who will profit from the new order do not do enough to make it happen. Because man is incredulous in his nature, not wanting to try new things until he has witnessed experience of it. Let us be ready for change. What matters is being ready for change and making everybody come together through good leadership to go to where the promise of our country is. Nigeria will rise up again.
Another round of applause, please, for our professor, Professor Patutomi. Please be seated.
Welcome back to the Platform Studio, and we just finished listening to our two professors back-to-back, Professor Hosa Osagai, who talks about restructuring is federalism and federalism is restructuring, and also Professor Patutomi, who also spoke on restructuring as a way of avoiding the lottery effects and the tragedy of the commons. Strong topics indeed. And I'll start from Opinia. So they sort of were similar, but at the same time, they sort of were opposites. What do you have to say on those two topics?
Look, I think at the end of the day, there's a lesson for today's generation of Nigerians, all right, in listening to these men, both in their 60s, towards the tail end of their careers, about how much information that they have about the origin of what's going on.
Yes.
And in a sense, how little information is available to this generation without there being some kind of handoff of that into this place. So I think for me, the key message coming through is the need for all